This is part of the cost of doing business, learning. Sometimes the hard way about who you will resonate with and who is a good fit for your firm, and also learning about yourself. That's part of it. You have to be able to not only grow your firm, but also grow as a person, as a human.
Welcome to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Join hosts Cheryl and Liz, the visionary and integrator balancing all the moving parts of a full-service interior design firm. Get ready for a wild ride as they challenge the norms, challenge the industry, and challenge you with damn good truths about what success looks like today. Now your hosts.
All right, welcome everyone back to the Damn Good Designer podcast. We are going to jump right into our topic today because this is a topic that needs to be brought out of the shadows. So let's get after this, okay? Setting client expectations is not about a quick, here's our process in pretty words, or God forbid, a 15-step thingy you put on your website or you put in a welcome packet or whatever the heck. What we are missing here and what has changed so much in the past 5 years is that consumers are way more savvy than ever before. And we have to give respect where respect is due to these savvy consumers, these people that are much more cognizant of the design process and of what's going on and all of that. So the wisdom you learned years ago may have worked then, but I think it's tougher to make it work now. And this is what I believe is the biggest problem people face when they are at that initial stage and they are met with a client that is savvier and is asking questions. That is also why I might put out there into the universe is a little different than what you might hear from others. I'm not sitting still here, and neither is my team, and we're not letting the world evolve without us. We have to stay relevant all the time, right? And so we're along for the ride, no matter how bumpy. Can anybody guess what the heck I am talking about? Liz, you know what I'm talking about? I don't even know if you've looked at the notes, so you may not know what we're talking about.
I think I do. I did. I did.
Okay, Liz has looked here on it. Okay. Just because someone needs educating or simply a general thanks but no thanks, which is perfectly okay, does not mean that this client is a red flag, okay? I hate labeling people in this way, okay? I really do. It is like fingernails on a chalkboard. And, sometimes people are doing these Facebook posts lamenting the idiocy of humans and how dare they contact you and, ask these questions and, what is it with these people that are just, they clearly don't understand it, the process or your process or, whatever. And people have these complete and total ridiculous meltdowns. I mean, seriously. And then there's this sort of mob mentality we see all too often when it comes to the red flag clients or the horror client stories or, whatever it is. How helpful is it to you when people pile on in these forums and they say, run, and that's the one that drives me crazy. I mean, seriously, it just drives me bonkers when people say that because it's just like all the time. I mean, I guess I'm in these groups too much, obviously, or they'll be like, get out, or he's a jerk, I mean, really, without even knowing. All they're knowing is like what the client, or what the designer has said about something. They're not asking thoughtful questions. They're not asking to actually help the person who's posting about this or is talking about it. And how is this serving your goals to be able to just pile on that way? Is this mob mentality thing is just, I don't know. I just want to talk about it because it drives me crazy. And I think everybody knows that. I have actually banned the words red flag in the Small Business Think Big group, as a joke, obviously, and no one's getting kicked out for saying it. But I just don't like it because I think it's a mindset thing. I think it's a mindset that people, get into it. I mean, and then when people, the interesting thing about humans is that then someone says something, right? In these groups, Liz, they'll go through this whole deal and, oh, he's so horrible and he's blah, blah, blah. And he probably is. Maybe he is a horrible person. I'm not saying he's not or she's not or whatever. But it's just, to me, it's like weird that everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Everybody is jumping on the bandwagon. But then I may pop in and say, ask questions or may say, well, is it really that bad that he's asking you questions about your contract? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to change it just because someone's asking. I mean, and then once I say something, then there's other people that will agree. So I know there's people out there that agree, because sometimes it takes someone to go against the tide, and y'all know I'm a natural born contrarian. So of course I'm going to be that one that says something on it. But I don't think this whole jumping on this bandwagon of run, and all that, I don't think it's productive time spent. And I don't think it's all that entertaining. And I'm all for entertaining, a bit of Facebook, occasionally with these posts and that sort of thing. I love it, But there is this confident humility. That's what, I forget who calls it that. There's somebody, maybe it's Adam Grant, because I love my Adam Grant. I just love me some Adam Grant. And it may be him that says it, but it may not be. Maybe somebody else. So I don't want to attribute that to him unless it is for sure him. But this confident humility that is lacking in designers who clearly do not understand a single thing about first impressions. And I think the quote goes something like, "We become blinded by arrogance when we're utterly convinced of our strengths and our strategies," meaning that we are so convinced of our righteousness that we become blinded by that arrogance and not being empathetic to the client, whether it's a client or whether it's a lead or whatever the case may be, because there's red flags apparently, everywhere. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about that? You don't have to.
I stay out of that stuff on
to
Facebook, because I think I probably would get sucked in like you do. And I think, I don't know, you taught me very, very early on in all of this that there is always, even when you feel so convinced that you're right, there is always going to be something, some point of growth, some process, something that could be refined from what it is that you're doing that could make the experience better. And, I think that's why when we do have little hiccups or things that pop up, I'm always like, I want to just get on the phone and nip it right in the bud. I don't believe.
Which I love about you. I love that.
I don't believe in stewing in that, because I really do think, like you said,
it's so good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the quickest way to get to a solution. And a lot of times, the more you stew with people sometimes about whatever, that negative thing, or, everyone starts, like you said, jumping on the bandwagon saying how, oh, well, they're terrible, or, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing, or, oh, well, obviously they need you more than they realize. They're not really acknowledging the fact that this person probably comes from a completely different profession, maybe does not have good groundwork laid for them to understand what your process is. And heaven forbid they have a question. That's a very human and understandable thing. And if you can't address that in what you do professionally, then why are you doing it? Why are you working with people at all? I don't really get it.
Right. Or there's other things that people call red flags. It's not just about a question. That's just the first thing that popped into my head. But there's other things, the client's doing this, the client's doing that, or whatever. But I think that it's a growth issue a lot of times. There are jerks, don't get me wrong, because we have, seen our own fair share. So there are people out there that just are not always good humans and all of that. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm not Pollyanna. Hello, this is Cheryl here. I am not Pollyanna. I am not saying everybody is just so great. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that, your business might have grown exponentially in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever, because a lot of people have grown quite a bit. And what I would ask you is, are you personally growing along with that? And that means, refining your sense of asking certain questions, like, have I educated this client? Is my website adequate? Is it giving off all the information that it needs for this client to understand, or this lead to understand how we work? Is my messaging on target? Do I position my company for my ideal client and for the best possible scenario with a lead? And the truth is many do not. More than many, really. And so I think that what I'm getting at here is that there is a lack of self-awareness sometimes with all of us. Good Lord, if I had to even tell you how many times in a day that I have to look myself, what I call the man in the mirror, except it's a woman, me, and face the fact that, okay, maybe I didn't handle that well, or maybe this could have been done better, or whatever. I have to do that all the time. I think actually Liz and I are both pretty good at that. And because we have strong personalities, and when you have a strong personality like I do, you absolutely have to master looking at the man in the mirror and saying, okay, maybe that was my fault, or maybe I rushed to this, or maybe I moved too fast, or maybe I could have handled it better, or maybe I could have, been more clear, or whatever, as Liz would like to say, those kinds of things, maybe that's what's happened. And I think that self-awareness is really an asset for me. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it or anything else, but facing that man in the mirror is really important. And I think it's important for the growth of your company. So as your company grows, you also have to grow yourself, or you're going to, not have greater profit margins, better projects, the ideal clients, and all of that. And I have to say, I have such an incredible passion for small businesses, because I really feel like I've just been nagging a lot lately with everybody. And that's not the point here. The point is really for you to stop a moment, and my ideal designers, the people that are going to connect with me, are going to do just that. They're going to stop and say, well, maybe I did rush to judgment on that, or whatever. And the first thing anyone should do when confronted with a less than ideal scenario, or perceived this way, is face that man in the mirror, and ask, have I done everything I can do to make sure the messaging that I'm putting out there, and that means, in person, on the phone, in your website, everywhere, is where it needs to be. Busy professionals, y'all. Okay. Busy professionals, hello, aren't we all busy professionals? Because I know that most of us are, can always appear to be skeptical, annoyed, all those kinds of things. I know my own team sees that, with me. I totally get that. Right?
Yeah. And I think that sensibility, or the need to be able to handle questions in a direct fashion, shouldn't constantly be met with resistance, or with surprise, or with an expectation that everything should be fluffy. I think half the time Cheryl's begging me to have less fluffy emails, because sometimes I beat around the bush a little bit, maybe because I want to, be soft about it. But
you want to be nice, I think that and soft. Well, sometimes you are. Sometimes you are too fluffy. That's for sure. Sometimes you just need to get right to the point. Just go to the direct path, the straight shot down the road. You don't need to go in and out, weave around all the traffic.
It can be difficult to, approach a situation where you're working with a client who has hired you for a very particular type of service. They're paying you a nice chunk of money, and they have certain expectations. And if either expectations are not met, or they're surprised by something, a lot of times those are the situations, I think, that flare designers up. It's like, that's the part where they say, like, oh, well, how could you not understand this? Or this isn't my fault, or, fill in the blank. But sometimes it's because their expectations haven't been set properly, or you haven't really done the sort of legwork that's needed to ground them in a place of reality and what to expect. And rather than taking that as an affront, you should look at that as an opportunity to say, you know what, let's talk about this. Let's address this, because I want this to go productively, and we need to figure out a better path forward.
Right, exactly. And I think that the part of the situation here is getting into, like I said, the mob mentality. I can't think of another word to say that. Is I think that when we never had forums before. Like when I was growing up in the design industry, we didn't have all that Facebook stuff and everything else. And I wish we did, because I think it's just such a fabulous opportunity for people to learn from others. But I also think that you have to put a governor on it sometimes, because you can get, sucked into that righteous indignation. And when you get people that are egging you on in a way, I don't know that that's always, and it's not their job to be educating you or whatever. They're trying to be supportive of people and all that, but I'm not sure if that's healthy all the time. When people are saying, yeah, that guy's a total douche for asking questions or wanting to change your contract or whatever, rather than getting at what really is going on. And I think of like my mother saying to me, garbage in, Cheryl, garbage out, and don't get sucked into other people's drama. She would tell me that all the time in high school because, I just do love me some drama. So my mom would be, constantly be saying that. And I think that sometimes you can be supportive. You don't have to be argumentative or whatever, but you can say, I'm not going to get sucked into this type of situation by egging somebody on. Or if you're the one posting it, realize that that people are trying to help if they are not agreeing with you or something. And I don't know, these types of threads, I think, make people codependent on others to validate their possible lack of skills at reading people, educating clients, or even just interpersonal skills, maybe at deflecting someone who is not sold on your value, which is really your job to do. I mean, really, that's your job to do that. And I think when you really sum it up, now, again, I'm not saying this all the time. We've all had nightmare clients. People have had, whatever. I mean, we actually don't have a lot of nightmare clients, to be honest with you. We have a lot of really great clients. But I mean, there's problems. I mean, there's just problems in the business. But I think this is really sort of the sum of it, is that these types of groups and things, while I love them to death and all of that, I think that there is a way, it's another way of being codependent, in a way that is different than it used to be. Social media is like probably codependent in a lot of different ways. We could probably talk about that for hours, but it's really not helping you to really assess the situation and see where is the problem along the lines. And Liz, I love to solve a problem. And that's super important to me. And sometimes that is a thankless job because I try to solve a problem and then I get into trouble and all that. And then I get a rebuke from an admin or something or whatever. Not so much lately, but I'm just saying sometimes I do. And really, my heart is always in the right place. Anybody who knows me knows that. But to me, sometimes these threads solidify the idea that some of us are the problem, that some of us, aren't the problem and not trying to be the solution for the industry. Yeah. To be clear, not talking about asking for help, a truly bad situation or anything like that. I'm just not talking about that. But I think you need to step away and don't feel like you have to commiserate when someone is going off on a bender about their new lead. Maybe they just need to vent, and there's nothing wrong with that, and people saying, gosh, I'm so sorry, I hope this gets better or whatever. But don't be so quick to say red flag or run or whatever, because I just don't think that you are helping anybody. I think you're getting sucked into it. I don't think it's good for your mental health. I think these posts are really honestly seeking validation, and you just don't have time for that. You personally don't have time to jump in there and to validate somebody else, feeling like the client is a total jerk. You can be commiserate or whatever you want to do, but I just don't think it's healthy for a lot of people. And I've had to counsel some of my, some of my designers about this because I see them doing just that, and God knows I've probably done it too, Liz. I don't,
Right. Yeah, and I think that for the most part, we all obviously have bad days and there are things that don't maybe go the way that we want. But I think that slowing down just in general and being able to kind of like reflect on something before you decide to post maybe too is a good sort of moment to take when it comes to deciding when you want to share stuff like this. I think that for a lot of these type of situations, there's so much to the scenario that, of course, you would be intimate
behind
with
the scenes
as the designer, but the rest of the people who are involved are not going to know anything about it. And also, I think that from the point of being more supportive in the industry, being able to look at someone's situation and just like you said, kind of acknowledge, like, I really don't have enough information to even be able to comment on this, never mind to jump on the bandwagon. There is so much that we learn when we slow down and really decide that this is something that I don't want to have happen again. And I need to figure out how it is that I don't want to get to that place. And we get so process driven about it, but it's the truth. It really is how you grow a business. So being able to really identify whether or not it's worth posting or worth getting involved or worth identifying like, oh, that sounds terrible. I don't want that to happen to me. Look at it as an opportunity to be more reflective on what it is that you need to do better, as opposed to constantly blaming someone else for whatever it is that is being presented to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it because, let's just face it, clients are not going to understand everything. They don't do what we do.
Right.
You know, they don't understand it. And I think a lot of this goes right back to one of my most important topics that I like to talk about, which is managing those expectations. I think people think they're managing expectations because they have, you know, the welcome packet or the whatever. And it's like, don't do this, do that, whatever. And, you know, sometimes people don't read it. Maybe everything is covered in there. Maybe it's not. Clearly it's not, because we see the posts all the time. And, you know, people don't understand. They don't want to pay for storage. They don't want to pay for time to manage all the moving parts. They don't understand your contract. They don't understand why it took you 10 hours to do this or that. That's a good reason not to charge hourly too. And you know, here's the bottom line. If the client wants to go and get it one and done and put together all the parts and pieces in themselves, let them do it. You know, don't fight it. Just let them do it if that's what they want to do. But you need to figure that out up front before you've engaged your resources, before you've, you know, counted on that income and everything else. You need to figure out if that person is like that. But I just don't think that people should call other people red flags, because I think there's more to it. I'm not saying that people aren't jerks. I just think there is more to it. And a lot of times what I see when these comments and whatnot, and even when I've worked with designers over the years and they've had a problem and everything, and I really am very thoughtful at digging deep to find out, like, okay, and then what happened? And before that, did you explain this? Did you say, and someone, no, well, actually, Cheryl, I didn't put all that. I skipped that page in the visual scope of work, or I didn't, you know, go over that or whatever. Or just like you said earlier, just pick up the phone and call, and maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe maybe that person's having a bad day or whatever. I don't know, Liz. I just think managing expectations well is one of the bigger issues we have as an industry.
I mean, absolutely. And it's,
I know
again,
that
I think
do
that
it's here.
Right. And it's difficult because obviously you don't always know exactly what someone's going to expect, and they might not immediately sort of present you with the information to be able to help them through that. But I think that we do a lot on the front end, not just in kind of the discovery call and the consult meeting, but in our scope of work and in kind of laying the groundwork for what to get prepared for with our process, that it does help to some degree. But there's always going to be clients who feel like something is, you know, maybe unfair, or that the timeline that is required for a, you know, contractor to get something done is not going to be reasonable.
That's life.
Or
that's life.
You know, yeah, fill in the blank. I think the biggest thing for us to be able to do is just to support in all those other ways, so that we're making sure that on the other end of the spectrum, everything is in line as best it can be, so that those other parts and pieces stay on track. And being able to sort of talk people back off the ledge and say, you know, totally understand, totally appreciate your patience while they're trying to get this stuff figured out. You know, we get it. It's been a long day. It's been a long week, whatever it happens to be. You know, next week we're going to start on a good foot, and this is what we're going to do about it, is so much more productive than going down this rabbit hole of, you know, blaming or getting kind of snarly with them to exacerbate the situation, which, you know, who really wants to then have to deal with that? You know, it's all a choice that we make. And I think that, you know, being able to be productive about how you look forward about it is the more important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, okay? So you know, let's say that the client really is a turd butt, okay? I mean, like, let's just say that really is, and it's really unfair, you know? And I'm thinking of a particular one, Liz, like, can you understand what I'm thinking about right now? But let's talk about that for a minute, and let's remind everybody, because I don't have the replay of this, although it would be kind of funny if I did, and I'll give it to Russ to put it into the podcast. But, you know, where I caught you on the phone on the security, talking to a client, and this is Liz calling the client. Like, I was ready just to say, dude, you are so done. You know, we're done, period. You know, that's it. I didn't really care about the rest of it because it was such egregious behavior, you know, on his part, but not Liz. Liz is picking up the phone and calling him a client that was really upset about, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was a relatively early on in the process, and we had done everything. And please, y'all, we communicate like to the the cows come home with clients. But remind us, tell me about that conversation again, or tell us about that conversation and how you handled it, because this is an interesting one, y'all, because we went on to finish the project. I never went out to the place again, but it turned out to be all really okay. It really did. And this was a situation where the client was clearly in the wrong. I mean, without a doubt, this was not, because believe you me, especially when it's my team, the first thing, it's not just I look at myself at the man in the mirror and see what I have done wrong or what I could have been complicit into a particular behavior. But I also analyze that with my team. Like, okay, Liz, did you get back to him on the such and such? Did you do this? Did you do that? Or whatever. But anyway, this all happened, and there was emails firing back and forth. And Liz was like, I'm just, going to call this guy up on the phone. So tell me about that conversation, because I think that there is a lot to learn from how you handled that, because you are not a pushover. We have that on tape that you weren't a pushover. So tell us about that.
Right. Well, I think what prompted it was, I do think that ultimately the client was not totally clear on what documentation he had received to a certain point for the project. But after sort of forwarding it back to him and trying to explain, we've got multiple emails that we submitted to you that had not been responded to, and follow up and all that type of thing, he was really upset, and he was kind of name calling a little bit and saying, how could you think that this is a professional way to treat people? And, my heart goes to this place of being like, I'm working on a Sunday, on a holiday weekend, to try to get you what you need. And you think that I don't care about this? Like, of course I'm going to get, my version of riled up is to want to get on the phone and be like, we're going to resolve this.
Which you shouldn't have done. I mean, you didn't call him until at work because we got it on the camera. So that you did. But I mean, I know what you're talking about, because I think it was during Mardi Gras, because I remember being out at the parade and my phone was blowing up. And yeah, y'all, I sometimes check it, especially when I'm at the Mardi Gras parade and I'm like caught enough beads. I mean, you know what I mean? I was just sitting there with nothing else to do. Actually, that was when I had not my knee problem, but the ankle problem, one of the problems. So I was sitting there and everybody else was having a good time. And I remember reading some of those and thinking, like, what the heck is he talking about? But what I'm talking about, when you called him on the phone, you called him out. I mean, you said in a nice way, sort of, I mean, mostly, you said to him like something like, that's a bunch of horse malarkey, except that's not the word she used.
Oh, yeah.
And so you gave it right back to him, and you knew that it was okay for you to do that. And I know a lot of you are probably right now going, why didn't you just end this? But, and say, forget it. The problem is that Liz and I's personality is not like that. The guy was wrong, and he needed to admit, he needed to understand, because he just wasn't reading his information to understand it. But how did the phone call, like after, because we only have part of it on the thing where you were making your infamous, that's a bunch of horse whatever and all of that. And so, but when you work through the rest of the conversation, how did it end up coming to this point where we ended up finishing this job? Like I said, this is not a huge job, but we ended up finishing it. Everything was good. And now they want us to do something else with them.
We're doing the kitchen this year. Yeah. I mean, I think that a big part of it was just kind of really asking him to explain better what it was that he felt he didn't understand or hadn't received, because a big part of his gripe in what he was communicating to us was that, the deliverables that we had presented to him in terms of how our scope was outlined were not consistent with what had happened in the scope to that point. And so I went through it with him. I explained, on such and such a date, we submitted you with these plans. On such and such a date, we had this meeting. On such and such a date, we had this phone call to review these things. Granted, thankfully, we have really great records of all that in our project management system, so it makes it easier to be able to reflect back to a client. But once I started going back through all of that, and he started to kind of tone back and hear that I wasn't going to give up on the fact that this is a contract that we have to complete this project. We have done everything that we are within, contract to do for you to this point, and there is absolutely no reason for this reaction to be happening. He sort of started to back down a bit. And what is kind of funny now that I think about it, because it's been a minute, is that it never really came up again.
Several years.
And he was really quite lovely after that to work with.
I know. So maybe
it's
he
kind
was
of
having
unusual.
a moment. I don't know. I mean, maybe he was having a moment, because he definitely, I've got the emails. He definitely was being a turd butt and all that. But maybe sometimes, he just, recognize it. I will say that I think busy professionals, and he had his own business and all that, can often come across as dismissive or direct or whatever. And it doesn't always mean they are rude. In this case, it definitely meant he was being rude. But it doesn't always mean that. It doesn't always mean someone's a red flag or going to be difficult or, whatever. I mean, they are asking to be sold on you some of the times. I mean, really, when it's like somebody that's just asking questions and wanting to know, but it's ruffling your feathers for whatever reasons. Think about, like, is it ruffling your feathers because of legitimate reasons, or is it ruffling your feathers because you really haven't explained that or whatever? I mean, I think that once you sell me on why you're the best for any job, I'm not a micromanager because the trust is established. And I think that's the truth for a lot of busy professional people. I'm definitely not a micromanager with my team unless I get the idea that they're not paying attention to something or that they're not delivering what they're supposed to be delivering, okay? And that is the truth. So I think a lot of people are like that too. And I have worked with these kinds of people for years. I'm not the kind of people we're talking about with the Liz situation. I'm talking about, just busy professionals that just don't suffer fools gladly, that they're very direct. They might be engineers, they might be attorneys, whatever. They don't give two potato luckies about what you charge as long as you are fair, you have sold them adequately, and you can properly respond to questions without immediately assuming the worst. I mean, you have to have a little bit of a thicker skin. I mean, they just don't have time for that nonsense. I mean, someone said to me the other day, I'm trying to remember who it was or what the circumstances were, but someone said to me, like, you have worked with some of the most notorious people in town, some of the people that are really strong personalities. I said, yeah, because I can relate to them because I am that same, personality type. And I think there is nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with that because what I find is that people like that, and I am the same way. I am my ideal client. Busy professionals do not suffer fools gladly. Just do what you say you're going to do. Make it clear to me, concise, and show up when you're going to say you're going to show up and all those kinds of things, or communicate with me. Good communication is key. And I think that I really can relate to those kinds of people. And it doesn't bother me at all to work with people like that, because once you establish that trust and you establish you are going to do what you say you're going to do, then it's like smooth sailing and it's wonderful, fabulous projects. We work with a lot of business owners. And I think that's why we get a lot of those clients, because I'm the same thing, busy female professional who runs many businesses and a team to manage and all those kinds of things, and I don't tolerate a lot of attitude or BS. I will tell you, in Liz's situation, I probably would have been like, okay, we're done here. But Liz wasn't going to have any of that because he was wrong. And, she has got a really strong sense of what's right and what's wrong. And the truth is, I probably wouldn't have let it go either because he really was wrong. He really had made mistakes on it, with it. Yeah. So I think that if you get to that level of service and you have done your job as a small business owner and you convince me of your value proposition and all of those things, I am going to be a piece of cake client once you get to that. And I think that's a way a lot of clients are. I would much rather deal with a strong business owner, someone who doesn't suffer fools gladly and all those things. I would rather deal with that than anybody else. And I don't have a problem when somebody asks about our contract. I mean, really, I don't. I mean, we don't get it very often. And it's 8 pages. Hello, thank you. Okay. It's not like a walk in the park. But I don't get a lot of that because I think we go through it in advance. We talk about it and all of that. But if someone does ask about it, I welcome that. Let's get all of that out in the open up front. What is wrong with that? It doesn't mean you have to change it. It just means that someone is smart enough to question something they don't understand. How many times have we all signed contracts that we probably really don't understand, and we do have questions, but we just don't want to bother with it, or we don't want to rock the boat, or, whatever. And I think, honestly, Liz, I think sometimes that the design industry in general just forgets that they're also small businesses, first and foremost. Yeah. And they need to act like one. They need to act like one and say, okay, this person, I'm going to have clients that are cranky. I'm going to have clients that question me. I'm going to have clients that don't understand the process. But the key for me in this whole conversation is just being reflective and looking at that man in the mirror, and then also not getting into this mindset of calling everybody a red flag. Can you imagine? How would that, Liz, how would that make you feel if every time something went a little bit tiny wonk with a job, with something, and I ran into your office every time and said, oh, he's just such a red flag, Liz, how would that make you feel about doing your job?
Yeah. I mean, it again, I don't think it's a good mental place to get into because it's not identifying what some of the real problems are. You're blaming essentially a person for their reaction, which again,
right.
99% of the time, there probably is a reason for the reaction, whether it's founded or unfounded, but responding to it in a more authentic way because you are a business owner, you're a professional. Again, say it again, you're a professional. This is not a situation where you want to be, ghosting clients' emails or getting your feathers all ruffled or getting nasty with the contractor or whatever it is that you think is going to make someone else's life more difficult because they're making your life difficult. Those are not the ways to get productively through some of these issues. So being able to really reflect on the fact that, and I think this is part of the reason why you have been so successful with a lot of the clients that you have been, is because we don't mess around with that. We are here to get a job done. We're here to get good work done. We're here to make sure that the client is taken care of and that we can advocate for them where we need to. And that's the bottom line. If people want something else, if they want the drama and all that, we're not the people for them.
No, we're really not. And I think that too, going back to the managing expectations part, is that I mean, look, y'all, if you suss out at the beginning and discovery call or initial consult that a client really is a person that wants to do it all themselves, and that's not a product that you offer because you're only doing full service design, let them do it. Let them go. Right. Okay. So don't get into these situations where you're gnashing your teeth about it. Find out up front, what kind of people they are. That's why our questionnaire has some psychological type of questions on it, because I want to know how people react in stressful situations. How do they react? What is their pressure points and all those things? And I think that our questionnaire does a pretty good job of finding out like sort of what their attitude is about life and how, easygoing they are or whatever. And we have clients that are so easygoing that are just incredible because they trust the process, but they still run businesses and are still uber successful and all of that. And then there's other ones that are more type A and that want to know. And by God, if you don't communicate with them in a timely manner, then you're in trouble. But that's why we put things into place like our weekly recaps and things like that, because a client's never going to be able to say, well, you didn't tell me that, or I didn't know that, or whatever. I mean, we never hear that. We never hear that because it's all right there. And I think that that's something that if you're not doing that, you need to be doing it, even if you just send a weekly recap that says, hey, just hoping you have a great weekend. We're still waiting on, the sofa from, wherever that they are hand making every piece of it and it's taking forever. We're still waiting for that. And, hope you have a great weekend or, whatever the case may be. Hope I see you out and, stop by and have a glass of wine, whatever the case may be. Having that connection with people is so important because communication ultimately is the answer with all of this. And please, people, pick up the phone and call when there is something going on, because I am very guilty of sending text messages that are terse or emails that aren't very touchy-feely. Just the other day, Liz and I conferenced in with two people on our team to explain some things that we were changing and all that, because I thought, if I send an email about this, because I'm just getting back from being out of town and all that, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna do the right thing here. I'm not going to send it like that. I will follow up with an email to have it in writing, but I am not going to send that because I want them to understand that because the information could have been misconstrued or whatever. And I didn't want to spend 3 hours trying to compose an email that was all touchy-feely when I'm not a touchy-feely person. So the answer is, like Liz, hey, can we just hop on a call with these people, on the team to be able to go over these things? And just like you were talking to a client the other day and saying, hey, we need to get that bill paid. We need to be able to do this. We need to do, here's the situation. There's just, I think that in the light of day that emails and text messages and all that are great. I mean, I am like a big proponent of, all those things. We don't banish texting or anything like that because I just turn the phone off. If I don't want to answer, I just don't, because to me, that's very simple. But I understand it does intrude on some people and they can't ignore it and all that. I can ignore the heck out of it. It doesn't bother me. So if you have your rules or whatever about all of that, but all of that stuff is really good. But you know what? A good old-fashioned phone call sometimes when there's a miscommunication can really be key. And I think you do a great job at that, Liz, and just picking up the phone and addressing it, even though later I may be going, what'd they say?
Well, just like, you said it in a nutshell there, which is that when you're on the phone with someone, you can hear their tone of voice. You can hear how they phrase things. They don't have a chance to craft what it is that they're going to say necessarily. And you don't either. And I think that, again, that kind of more authentic interaction is what's so important there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, here is our damn good truth for the day. This is part of the cost of doing business, learning. Sometimes the hard way about who you will resonate with and who is a good fit for your firm, and also learning about yourself. That's part of it. You have to be able to not only grow your firm, but also grow as a person, as a human. And of course, there are clients that are not going to work best with us. Nothing wrong with that person. It may just be that it's not your ideal client. And often it's not the client who is a quote unquote, red flag. It's the designer not making the process clear, or the designer not understanding the client's worldview, or a designer's expectations not being clearly explained. And all I'm asking is for everybody to think about that and to really go over your processes and make sure so that when somebody is questioning something, if it's really been explained to them. And this does not mean that there are not jerks or narcissists or even clueless clients. Of course, these people exist. They do. But they often don't come around to a business who is projecting who they want to work with and being very clear in that messaging. And I think that's why we avoid them by and large, certain types of client personalities that other people may get. Okay? So that's the damn good truth for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we hope that you will come back next week.
Bye, y'all.
Until next time, stay bold, stay inspired, and keep embracing your bag girl spirit. If you've enjoyed today's show, head over to join the community at damngooddesigner.com to continue the conversation and sign up for our newsletter.